All right, so we're diving into on-page SEO today. Looks like someone handed us a friendly guide to on-page SEO techniques, someone who's ready to climb those search engine ranks and bring in those visitors.
You got it. This guide's packed with good stuff. Let's see what we can dig out, shall we?
You know, reading through this, it really hit me how much work goes into making a website really pop online. It's like, I don't know, remember when I was trying to rearrange my living room? I thought just a quick tidy up would do it. But then you start moving that furniture, adjusting the lighting, suddenly you realize how much those little changes matter.
It's all about presentation. Same goes for websites. You can have a site, sure, but making it shine, that's where on-page SEO comes in. It's all about tweaking every little thing to make it click for both people and search engines, you know what I mean?
Right. And the guide mentions, visibility, user experience, and credibility as these core benefits of good on-page SEO. So visibility, that's just about getting your site seen, right?
Exactly. Think of it like you want your site to be the first one someone recommends when their friend needs, well, whatever it is you offer. Then there's the user experience, making sure whoever lands on your site actually enjoys being there, finds it easy to use, keeps them engaged.
And then, of course, there's the credibility factor, building trust, making sure people see your site as the go-to for whatever you're all about. So how do we actually make all that happen?
Well, they say content is king, right? True enough. But remember, your audience, they're the queen. It's like that sustainable living blog, the example from the guide. They went and wrote all this stuff assuming their readers were already pros. Turns out most folks were just starting out, had to rethink their whole approach.
Really drives home that point that we got to know who we're talking to, what they're really looking for.
Oh.
Which reminds me, the guide dives into crafting clickable titles, those headlines that grab your attention.
Like imagine you're a detective on a case. Which is going to catch your eye? Case file, #27, or mysterious disappearance shakes small town.
Okay, yeah, the second one, for sure. Way more intriguing. I'm hooked already. And the guide gave a good example of a strong title. 10 simple on-page SEO techniques to boost your website's ranking. It's clear. Tells you exactly what you're going to get.
Right, that's what we're going for. Titles that are informative and make you want to click. There was this study actually showed that a really good title can get you almost 6% more clicks. Just from changing a few words.
Whoa, that's huge. It's like they say, you really do judge a book by its cover, or in this case, a website by its title. So, got our catchy title, what's next?
Well, now we need to make sure the content itself is easy to follow, easy on the eyes. Headings, that's the key.
Those H1, H2, H3 tags, all that, right? Those always kind of trip me up.
I hear ya. They seem simple enough, right? But they matter for readers and for SEO. Imagine landing on a page and it's just a wall of text, no breaks, nothing. Headings give it structure, break things up, help people find their way around.
There's that website audit story in the guide. Website had amazing content, seriously good stuff, but zero headings. Finding what you needed was like, I don't know, looking for a specific spice in a market where nothing's labeled. Total chaos. Once they added headings, engagement went through the roof.
It's all about that roadmap, for your readers, for the search engines. Makes it clear what your content's all about.
Headings, those little road signs pointing everyone in the right direction. Okay, but what about meta descriptions? What's the deal with those?
Meta descriptions, those are your chance to really sell it. You're giving a little summary of what the page is about right there on the search results page. Think of it like a movie trailer.
Yeah.
You gotta highlight the good stuff, make them want to click.
So like those blurbs on the back of books that totally suck you in.
Exactly. Nail that meta description and people will be clicking through to your site instead of your competition's. We're talking potentially way more traffic, all because you took the time on that little snippet.
Every word counts. And speaking of words, URLs, man. I gotta admit, I always kind of gloss over those.
Happens to the best of us. But think about it. If you had to choose, which website sounds more trustworthy? Website.com/J4FH83 or website.com/onpage-co-tips.
Oh yeah, the second one, definitely. At least I know what I'm getting into.
Right. Clean, descriptive URLs just make sense. People understand them, and they can even help with those click-through rates we were talking about.
It's like, I don't know, picking a restaurant. You see a name that makes sense, maybe sounds kind of tasty, you're way more likely to walk in than if it's just something generic, right?
Yeah. Totally. And for search engines, it's the same deal. A good URL uses those keywords. It's like you're telling them exactly what the page is about. Helps with those rankings.
Makes total sense. Okay, so we've covered the word stuff, but what about the visuals? This guide, it's really big on images. How to get those right. I'll be honest, I usually just kind of upload whatever my camera gives me.
Oh yeah, no judgment here. We've all been there. But image optimization, super important these days, especially with everyone on their phones, you know? Every little bit of speed matters.
Oh, tell me about it. Nothing worse than waiting for a blurry picture to load, right? So what can we actually do about that?
It's like packing a moving truck, right? You wouldn't just chuck everything in there any old way. You want things to fit, be efficient. Compressing your images, that's key.
Right.
Shrinks those file sizes down without wrecking the quality.
So it's like those vacuum bags for clothes. Same stuff, takes up less space.
Nailed it. And then, just like you label those moving boxes, right? Gotta use good file names for your images. Search engines gotta know what they're looking at. img_1234.jpg, no good. Try redshoes-onsale.jpg instead.
Way more sense. And the guide's really big on alt text, too. That's just for accessibility, though, right? Making sure everyone can, use the site.
Accessibility is huge, don't get me wrong. Alt text, it gives that description for people who can't see the image. But it does more than that. Search engines, they can't see pictures like we can. Alt text is like their way of seeing it.
Right. Like in the guide, they had that Google Analytics screenshot, the one showing the traffic spike. Instead of leaving it blank, you could say, what? Website traffic graph showing a 20% increase? Gives context to everyone, search engines included.
Boom. Exactly that. It's like those captions on a silent film. Adds that extra layer of meaning.
This is blowing my mind, honestly, how much thought goes into this stuff. Speaking of which, they mentioned this thing called Structured Data Markup. What even is that?
Ever notice how sometimes you do a search and some results have those extra details like star ratings for a product, dates for an event, stuff like that?
Yeah, catches your eye for sure. Makes it super clear what you're getting.
That, my friend, is structured data working its magic. It's like you're giving search engines extra information about your content in a language they understand.
So we're giving them the VIP tour backstage, showing them how it all works.
Love that analogy. And the more they understand, the easier it is for them to be like, yep, this goes here. In the search results, might even get you one of those fancy, rich snippets.
Okay, so structured data, it's like subtitles for a foreign film. Makes it accessible to a whole new audience.
This is all fascinating, but I'm not going to lie, starting to feel a little overwhelmed.
Totally fair. SEO can be like that.
Yeah.
Trick is to break it down. It's like, I don't know, training for a marathon. You don't start by running 26 miles on day one, right?
Amen to that, one step at a time. Got to celebrate those little wins. Speaking of which, the guide's big on internal linking. What's the deal with that?
Internal links, think of them like those you might also like sections you see online.
Like when you go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. Start with one thing, end up 3 hours later reading about something totally different but somehow related.
That's the spirit. Except, we're doing it on purpose. It's like those see also sections in a really well-organized library guiding people to more of your awesome content. And Google digs that, right? When people stick around, explore the site.
Big time. The longer people stay, the more they click around. That tells Google your site's the place to be.
Win-win. Keeps people engaged and makes Google happy. Now, this might seem obvious, but the guide spends a lot of time on page load speed.
For a good reason. We live in a world of instant gratification. Remember dial-up. Waiting for a page to load was basically torture. These days, if it doesn't pop up instantly, people are gone.
And Google's watching, I'm sure.
Oh, you bet. Page load speed, it's a big deal for rankings. Think about it. You gonna recommend a restaurant with the slowest service ever, even if the food's amazing?
No way. Life's too short for that. So how do we speed things up on our end?
We talked about compressing images, but there's more. It's like tuning up a race car. You're looking for anything that's slowing you down. Minimizing HTTP requests, that's a big one.
HTTP requests, okay. Getting a little techie now.
Yeah, bear with me. Basically, every single thing on your page, images, code, fonts, all that, it needs a separate request from the server. More requests, slower the page. We got to streamline that.
So it's like carpooling for your website data,
Yeah.
fewer trips, faster arrival.
You got it. And then there's browser caching using a CDN. Don't worry too much about the details for now. Point is, speed matters for your visitors and for SEO.
Okay, makes sense. And while we're talking user experience, can't forget mobile friendliness. It's like everyone's glued to their phones 24/7.
Ain't that the truth? Mobile optimization, it's not a nice to have anymore. It's essential. Google even does this thing called mobile first indexing now.
Mobile first indexing. Fill me in.
It means when Google looks at your site, it's judging it mainly on the mobile version. So even if your desktop site is amazing, if the mobile version is clunky, your rankings are going to take a hit.
Like trying to stuff a giant suitcase into a tiny overhead bin? Not going to happen.
Perfect analogy. So yeah, responsive design is key. Website needs to adapt, look good on any screen size.
Like those transforming robots in the movies. Adapt to any situation.
Exactly. And don't forget things like making those fonts bigger, simplifying the navigation. Gotta make it easy for those thumbs to work their magic.
Smooth and enjoyable. That's the goal. And hey, the guide mentioned that Google has this mobile-friendly text thingy. Free tool checks your site for you. Pretty handy.
Super useful. Definitely check that out. Now, before we move on, gotta circle back to structured data markup. We touched on it before, but I want to make sure it's crystal clear.
Yeah, it was a little over my head, honestly. How does it actually work?
Remember, it's all about giving search engines those extra clues about your content.
Right, translating it into their language. But how do we actually do that?
We use this thing called schema.org. It's basically a way to tag or label different parts of your content. Think of it like those little info cards at a museum next to the paintings.
Got it. But does it, actually affect my rankings?
It's not a direct ranking factor, but here's the thing. The more Google understands your content, the better they can match it with what people are searching for. So indirectly, absolutely.
So it's those extra brownie points that lead to more clicks, more traffic, and ultimately maybe better rankings down the line.
You got it. It's all connected.
Like we're giving Google that backstage pass, making sure they don't miss a thing.
I like it. And remember, all of this, everything we've talked about, it's got to come back to the user.
Because at the end of the day, it's not robots visiting our sites.
100%. It's real people. And they're looking for good stuff, answers, entertainment, you name it. And, that's something this guide hammers home. Write for humans first, then worry about the search engines.
It's easy to forget that when you're deep in the SEO weeds, though.
Oh, for sure. It's like, I don't know, baking a cake using only the most precise scientific measurements, but forgetting to, add a pinch of love.
You get a perfectly engineered cake that tastes like cardboard.
Exactly. We've all been there. And in the SEO world, that's keyword stuffing. People jamming in as many keywords as they can, thinking it's some magic trick.
Shoving a week's worth of clothes into a tiny backpack, thinking it'll all fit in.
That's it. The guide actually mentioned they used to do this themselves, thought they were outsmarting Google, but it backfired big time.
It always does. Google's way too smart for that now, right?
They're onto us. They can spot that stuff from a mile away. You're more likely to get penalized than rewarded for it these days.
So what's the play then? How do we walk that line, making Google and people happy?
Honestly, good content wins every time. Think about your audience, what they actually want to read, answer their questions, solve their problems, That's what keeps them coming back.
So instead of how many keywords can I cram in here, it's how can I make this so good people will actually share it?
Now you're thinking. And speaking of sharing, the guide's a big fan of encouraging engagement, too.
Comments, social shares, all that jazz. Showing Google people are actually into it.
Yep. Doesn't matter how good your content is if no one's sticking around to read it. Think about a dinner party, right? You want lively conversation, not everyone sitting there in silence.
Awkward. I'd much rather be at the party where people are actually, talking to each other.
Exactly. And getting that going online, it's not rocket science. Ask a question at the end of a post, add those share buttons, actually respond to comments.
Be a good host. Makes a world of difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, we've thrown a lot of info at you today, but one thing to remember, SEO never really stops.
Right. It's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good way to put it. Like tending a garden, you got to keep at it if you want it to flourish.
And speaking of growth, analytics. Can't forget those. I'll admit, they kind of intimidated me at first.
Oh, they can be a lot. But they're your website's report card, What's working, what's not, gives you the intel you need.
The guide talked about some key metrics. Organic traffic, bounce rate, session duration.
What are those again?
So organic traffic, that's people finding you through search engines, shows you how visible you are. Bounce rate, that's how many people bail after just one page.
Ouch. Like they walked in and immediately walked back out.
Yep. Something's wrong. Got to figure out what.
Yeah.
Then there's session duration, how long people are hanging out.
The longer the better, right?
Exactly. It means that they're digging your content, clicking around, spending time with your brand. Makes sense. And the good news is there are tools for this. The guide mentioned Google Analytics, Google Search Console.
Free, too. It's like having a whole team of analysts at your beck and call.
Data nerds unite. Okay, so we're almost done here, but got to touch on that last big thing from the guide, ethical SEO.
Right. Can't forget about that. Building a website that lasts, it's got to be built on a solid foundation.
So what makes SEO ethical anyway? And how do we avoid those shady tactics everyone warns about?
Think of it like building a house on solid ground versus like on quicksand. One's gonna last, the other's gonna crumble.
The guide specifically called out buying backlinks. Why is that a no-no?
So backlinks are good, right? Another site linking to yours, it's like a vote of confidence. But when you buy those links, it's not real.
Like bribing the judges at a talent show.
Nailed it. And just like those judges, eventually you will get caught. Google's always watching.
So for our listeners out there, those who want to do this the right way, what's the key takeaway?
Good content, real connections, and a little patience. SEO is a marathon, not a sprint.
I like it. Well, I gotta say, I've learned a ton today. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me into a friendly guide to on-page SEO techniques.
Anytime. Always a pleasure to talk shop.
And to our listeners, remember, this is just the beginning. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and most importantly, have fun with it. Until next time, happy optimizing.